Greetings everyone, I'm Mar, and once again this is my opinion. Now, when a divorce occurs, there can be mixed feelings. There could be anger, there could be resentment, and even if you get along, once one or more of the couple decide to move on and pursue other relationships, there might be a little jealousy and a little bit of hurt. And not just for the two involved, especially if they're children, more so if they're of a certain age, whether they're very young or even older and have always had that idea of your parents never splitting. Those are going to come up in today's episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, and that of course is older women. This is the 9th episode of season 6, another Tucker Colley written one. I got to applause his writing here. And it's an episode I saw in syndication as well. Before we get too far into the review, just a reminder, if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to do a one-off request or a one-off support, go the PayPal route. If you want to continuously support the channel, subscribe to the Patreon and you'll gain access to videos early, and you'll also be able to request topics for future videos, such as reviews of Disney films like Captain Ron. Now, when I saw this in syndication, it cut off the first part of the episode, which set up the stage for it. So the first two scenes, the pre-credits, and then the first scene, dialogue scene, completely cut out. Which I could kind of understand, because if you want to make sure that the rest of the episode gets in verbatim, which all the major important stuff, yeah, some stuff's got to go in order to get more commercials in for syndication. So I can kind of see why they decided to cut that out. Or at least cut out the dialogue scene. They could have had the pre-credit and then just have the rest of it and you just go, oh, it occurred off screen. But definitely, I was confused the first time watching it. I'm like, what? But then with dialogue, I'm like, okay, I'm up to speed. So that's probably why they cut it. Now, as you probably can guess from the fact, it's called Older Women. The plot is about Debra's parents. It's Thanksgiving. Both of the parents are coming. It's been 8 months since the pair got divorced. Things have been sort of mutual. I mean, Lois even mentions that she and Warren do talk a couple of times a week, so they are staying friends, which is good. It's always better when the divorced couple do stay friends, which I can say from the one that I saw in my family, they did stay friends. That'd be my grandmother and my legal grandfather, my mother's adopted dad. They stayed friends, and I mean, hey, they were friends of the fact that they lived next door to each other when I was a youngin'. Like, the house that's on the other side of this window, that is where my grandfather used to live at one point. I don't remember how many years, but he lived there, and we'd even come over, and even my step-grandfather, Mike, and him would even talk and, like, drink O'Doul's and all that. So, he just show how close everyone still was. I know not all divorces are like that, but when it's good like that, it's nice to see a good example of that, so where you can see. And you can see that part of it's not too far-fetched. Maybe not for everybody, but it's not too far-fetched. Now, everything seems to be good until Lois drops the bombshell, and that is your father is going to be bringing a friend to Thanksgiving. Debra's the one that's really upset about this. Like, really? He's bringing a woman? Now, Ray's doing his little snide comments at first, you know, like, yeah, better be glad it is a woman. Oh, like, you can kind of see why he's doing it. He's trying to lighten the mood, as he says, but there are times where you try to lighten it and times where you don't. This is one of those ones where you should probably be quiet, just watch it. Maybe try to reassure Debra, like, it's alright, honey. But then for some reason, they decide to have a big old meeting with the rest of the Barones down in the living room. Watching this, I'm like, do we really have to bring them in there? Maybe they were already downstairs when she arrived, and when they went downstairs, Debra mentioned something, and then Lois decided to tell everybody. Marie, of course, is siding with Debra. She's really against it, mainly because of the fact he's bringing a date at the same thing where he's having his ex-wife. I get why Marie's feeling like that, but if they get serious, eventually they're going to have to be at the same functions together anyway, so at least pull that off there right now. I mean, this is the only time we do see this particular significant other of Warren's, so obviously they didn't last, especially what we're going to see in, I don't remember if it's season 8 or season 9. Well, we'll get to that episode when we get to it. Frank is like a little, and it looks like things are not going to go down well. And that's mainly because Debra is assuming that it's a younger woman. Which I could see why Debra would automatically assume that her dad is going with a younger woman. But you know, hey, male just got divorced. He's now single. It's been a long time since he's been ready to mingle. So yeah, he's going to go after a younger woman. I mean, there are women, let's say around my age, a little older, a little younger, that prefer older men like that. I mean, they rewrote part of a comedy involving Cary Grant in order to throw that in there to make the romance a little bit more believable, or at least a little bit more palatable, because he was getting a little sensitive about his age, as a little aside. So I can see why Debra would jump right to that, thinking like, oh yeah, she's just going there to make him feel a little young. You gotta make himself feel a little younger. Ooh. But even Lois thinks that, but maybe that's because she hadn't mentioned it. Well, they're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and Warren and his SO show up. Now, before they show up, Ray's trying to get through it because he's trying to side with Debra and trying not to make as many jokes, but he's already made a couple and he's hurt her, and you can already tell she's hurting. And he's trying not to make too many of them, but it's a little harder to get through because he's being ribbed the whole time by Frank and Robert, where they mention like, hey, what if those two get married and have a kid? And Robert has a line of one of the lines of the episode, and it's like, well, she already has a sister, maybe a brother this time. You know, that'd be awkward. You have to burp and change your own brother-in-law. But just the thought of Ray doing that is just fun. Well, Warren and his date show up, and his date's a bit older than him. And of course, when they see that, Robert's like, no brother for Debra. And they talk. We find out that they met each other at work. Now, they never mention how much older she is than Warren, but by the fact everybody knows instantly, I'd say at least a good 5 years at minimum older than Warren, maybe 10. It's enough to where everybody notices it. Now, she goes up for a nap after the drive, and we don't see her again until the final part of the episode. Now, I've mentioned before that Ray can be insensitive. In the line he says he doesn't mean it to be insensitive, but it's just the way he says it in the context of the situation that makes it insensitive, and that was, we thought Warren was going for somebody younger, but it turns out he was going for somebody different. Now after this, Lois has to go for a walk. Marie and Debra follow. Now he tries to cover it by saying, oh, I sometimes I say the opposite of what I mean. You know, I said, dinner, what's for hungry? Which, once they storm out, this leads to one of my favorite Peter Boyle one-liners. I don't know if I put it in any of the tribute, but if I didn't, it's an oversight. And that is him looking over at him going, Kill is going to Debra you. Which is right. Kill is going to Debra him. Because he had to say that, and that was very insensitive. And, as you can imagine, once Marie and Debra come back in, oh, they have a lot of fury to unleash on Ray. Yelling at him, going, you just insulted her. You basically just told your mother-in-law that it's not your looks, it's you. Which, that is one way to take it. I mean, anytime you would be told that, hey, it's not... And we thought he was going for someone, insert something here, but he was going for someone different. I mean, how are you not supposed to get offended by a line like that? And Debra is even pointing out at Ray, like, yeah, you'll go for anyone as long as they're different. And then he brings up a little bit of lore that we didn't know about in the show before, and that was when they were living in the apartment after Allie was born. See the end of season 5 for more. They had a cleaning lady come over named Claudia, who was overweight and walked with a limp. And the way they make it out is that Ray was looking at her like, oh, Claudia. What would I do with that limp? But Ray is like, nobody could avoid looking at her, I guess, because of just, it's a scene. Well, to tie it down a little bit more, Frank does mention that she did flirt a little bit, like she flirted a little bit with him. Now, that's just the way he's putting it. It could have been that she was just joking a little bit with him. Which leads to his line, I'm not a monk, which of course references the fact that in Peter Boyle's pre-acting days, that was a career option, going in as a monk. And of course go with the fact that Frank is a little perverted. I mean, even if he wouldn't actually do anything, he's still gonna, put the line, I like to watch. I mean, look, don't touch. He's not going to deny the fact he's going to look. Now, Ray does go and make up with Lois, and this is the first time he calls her Mom. And this continues until the episode Call Me Mom, which involves Debra trying to call Marie Mom. Now, I'm going to probably talk about that in a little bit more in depth in that episode, because I'll just say it here. I always thought it was a little normal to call your mother-in-law and father-in-law mom or dad, but I guess it's not for everybody, as we've seen in this show. But I guess it's one of those things, like, if you feel comfortable calling them that, go with it. Me personally, I think I probably would. I mean, I've called the people who basically spawned me that, but one of them doesn't really deserve the title, and because of her actions, and the other one, I don't know, because of his other stuff. I don't know if I should call him it, but he is, so there's just that. But the thing I had to mention in the notes, because I think of what it said in IMDb, and I'm going to read what I put verbatim here. In this episode, Ray addresses Lois as Mom, and when he does this, Marie is within listening distance in the next room and acknowledges this. However, on Call Me Mom, Marie is shocked to hear her. Now, that could be a plot hole, but the way I take it, and I'll probably go a little bit more on this when I get to that episode, is that I think she's shocked that he's doing it as a regular thing. I thought she was going to be like a one or just special occurrence type thing. And we'll talk about that, like I said, more when we get there. Now, the ending of the episode is, of course, them at Thanksgiving. Frank making his usual, oh, I didn't think you had it in it. Everybody, you know, going and acting the mom thing, especially Lois. And Ray's like, oh, that's what I got to be thankful for. I think it's half joke and half serious. And him being a little awkward, like, okay, this is going to make things awkward now. I got the two moms here. And then a nice little moment between Warren's date. I didn't put the actress's name or the character's name in my notes. Sorry about that. And Robert, and he's like, "There any more like you?" I guess Robert has never contemplated going after an older woman before, but now I guess he is. I mean, he's usually dated people his age or way younger, as we saw in one instance. So I guess he never considered that. Though I have a feeling that, to use a Bob Burger reference, Marie would have a crap attack if Robert went after an older woman, mainly because there'd be no grandchildren. Unless, of course, this older woman already had spawn and there'd be step-grandchildren. That's a situation that never came up on the show, so I don't know how Marie would react to step-grandchildren, but with how nurturing and stuff she is, I have a feeling she would be one of those ones that at first she'd be a little often, she'd be like, "Come to Grandma." That's just a little thing there. Oh no, this is another fun episode. I don't know if I'd put this in my favorite of the season, but this is definitely one I never skip, and definitely is always in the watch rotation, but it's probably not going to end up on the VHS list. The next episode, though, oh boy. There's only one list that one's going to end up on, and that is my least favorite of the whole season and my least favorite of the whole show. And I don't know how the last couple seasons are going to go, but if there is one episode that deserves to be ranted on, at least from how I look at things, it's going to be this episode. The episode I've been talking about, bringing up multiple times in the almost 2.5 years that I've been reviewing this show. It's here. It's going to be the next episode. For those of you who are looking at it and going, what, really, that one? Yep. For those of you who haven't, it's going to be next week or middle of the week, depending on how I decide to upload these episodes. The next Raymond episode, regardless of upload time, it's going to be the rant. It's going to be Ray Burt. Till then, guys.